this is the Middle East about 100 years ago, okay? A little more than 100 years ago. In the beginning of the 20th century, let's say 1900. It looks like that. And this is the Middle East now, after Britain and America. And France came and they started drawing random borders. Okay? That's before, that's after. Because you see all of these countries and this whole concept of, you know, a state, it's a European concept. It's a Western concept. This is not a concept that came from the region, nor was it agreed to by anyone in the region. Syria is all of this. Do you understand? All of that is Syria, but they then splintered it into little pieces. Oh, you've got one thing called Israel, then you got another one called Lebanon, and then you have another one called Palestine, which is like 2 parts. And then you have another thing called Jordan. And then, you know what, let's give a chunk of Syria to Iraq, and we'll give another chunk of Syria to Turkey over there. And then, you know, we'll just add some other countries down south. Let's go and make up, I don't know, Kuwait and the UAE and, you know, gas stations, basically. Gas stations, which is what they call Russia. They like to call Russia a gas station. No, actually, the real gas stations are these things. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE. These are gas stations, okay? So these borders are barely 100 years old. I'm talking about Sykes-Picot in 1916, and then we have Balfour Declaration a year later in 1917. All done in secret, all planned not here in the Middle East, but over here in Europe. So you tell me what gives anyone here the right to go down here and start carving things up. You can't. You can't. There's no argument for this. So Israel is completely made up. Okay? I mean, Zionism is even worse than what we're talking about because, you know, the carving up, the fracturing, the balkanizing of this region was not only about creating Israel. Like I said, it's about putting rich families in seats like Saudi Arabia. You know, the whole concept of Saudi Arabia is we want a family that we know are bandits, the house of Al Saud, and who are going to be aligned to our interests. Now, keep in mind, 73, king back then, different story. But for the most part, Western aligned. Kuwait, again, it's a piece of Iraq that they then carved out and said, oh, there's a lot of oil here. Kuwait. Oh, welcome to Kuwait. And then the UAE. The UAE is even bigger of a joke because most people who live here are not even they're not even Arabs. They're not even from the UAE. They're foreigners. I think it's 80%. 80%. I mean, if there was ever a fake country, look no further than Israel. But this is a good example as well. And lo and behold, who were in the Abraham Accords? Oh, it's those gas stations, Bahrain and the UAE. So do you understand the game here? And who is next in line to normalize ties with Israel? Oh, it's our buddies, Saudi Arabia. Oh, and who has already normalized ties with Israel? It's those other countries, Jordan and Egypt. Now, we got in a stranglehold, in a chokehold, that we made sure are going to do what we say. Now, Egypt, of course, is Egypt. Who can say Egypt is not real? Jordan, again, you got Hashemite family who put in place, controlled, you know, it's a Western asset. I mean, the guy's, forget it. I'm not talking about his wife. I'm talking about the king. His wife's Palestinian. I think she has no choice but to stay quiet, even though she tried to object to this. But, you know, she doesn't have any power. If she had power, she'd be gone. So you do understand the game here. And then when it comes to Syria, at the end of World War I, they kicked the Ottomans out. The Arabs did that, okay? And they did it with Britain's help. Now, the whole point was that you had Faisal, Prince Faisal, who then became King Faisal, and he was elected. He was elected to be leader of what is Syria. And they weren't happy with that. So you had something called the Kingdom of Syria, the Arab Kingdom of Syria. And then they basically, the French came, they removed him from power, and then Britain took him next door to Iraq. And they tried to make him popular in Iraq and kind of imposed him on people, even though he wasn't, you know, he had no a base or any kind of support there. It's illegitimate. It's another, you know, propped up leader. Not that he was propped up in Syria. In Syria, he was really legitimately elected. and it was democratic and it was independent. But no, it's because it's democratic, because it's independent, because it's not controlled by France and Britain that it had to go. Do you understand? So Britain, France, and America fucked the whole Middle East, and it's 2024, and these borders, these ridiculous lines on the map that are fake, that are illegitimate, that no one voted for, that no one asked for, they are the source of all the problems that you see today. Every single thing. Genocide in Gaza. Ethnic cleansing in Gaza, in Palestine, in Jerusalem. Whether we're talking about Christians or all Palestinians, it's the same thing. Displacement of populations. You got Palestinians going into Syria, Iraqis coming into Syria, and then Syrians going into Europe, and then you got some of them in Turkey, and you got Armenians that were killed, and it also went to all of these genocides, all of these transfers of populations, ethnic cleansing, were done by Europeans and their allies. So Germany and the Ottoman Empire. Remember, during Armenian genocide, all of the guns that the Ottoman Turks used were manufactured. They were German Kar-98s, K-98 rifles. So, I mean, it's the same thing you're seeing today. Half the bombs, 47% of the weapons Israel is importing are German. Same goddamn thing. Nothing changed. So we are seeing the effects of things that happened 100 years ago because they're still there. Nothing changed since 100 years ago, right? So what I'm interested in, I'm not interested in these borders. For me, these borders are fake. I just gave you the reason why. They're literally fake. It's not like my opinion that they're fake. They were drawn by a bunch of people in Paris. What the fuck does anyone in Paris have business doing drawing borders in the Middle East? Is it okay? So is it okay for, the president of Syria to just start carving up France? Why not, right? Since we're doing this, why not? I think we should allow that, right? So either we undo this with reparations paid by Britain and France and America, or we can keep going with this trend and we can have the president of Syria, maybe, I don't know, carving up France into like 50 countries. How about that? Right? Every département gets its own phone code and becomes its own independent republic. And why not have Scotland become independent as well? And then inside Scotland, we can have another 50 countries, right? Since we're doing this. How about that? It's only fair. It's only fair. It's only fair. So this is a bunch of rubbish to me. I'm not interested in these borders. It's just like in Africa. I mean, we got 54 countries in Africa. 54, right? How many of those do you think were drawn by Western powers? You can go ahead and guess in the comments because it's a fair bit. And then, of course, Latin America is a different issue. I'm not going to go through every continent now. I want to stay with the Middle East, with the Levant. So this needs undoing. Once again, we have Syria that's fractured into 5, 6 pieces. And we have the rest of them. Now, not everything in the Gulf is necessarily bad. Like, I mean, Yemen, Oman, for example, they've done nothing wrong, right? But these things here, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, I mean, they're a disaster for the Arab world. They've done nothing but house American bases, right? All of the American bases are in these countries. And they do nothing but attack other Arabs with them. I mean, when they invaded Iraq, they invaded it through Saudi Arabia because the Saudis, this criminal family that was installed by Britain, gave the Americans permission to put bases and weapons there, right? Now, I know Bin Laden doesn't like that. I don't give a crap about Bin Laden. He's a CIA asset. So we go back to the same thing, right? I'm talking to you from an anti-colonial viewpoint. So I'm not interested in all these lines. These lines mean nothing. They're a joke. Okay? They're a joke. They're a joke. No one voted for this, right? Usually this should be one country. This should all be Syria. Syria used to go all the way to where you see Gaza, ironically, right? So this over here is where Syria stretched to. And I can show you, I'll give you an example. Let me read something to you, okay? This is from Ibn Battuta, who's a great, very famous traveler. one of the most famous travelers and explorers in history. Okay, and I'll just read to you what he says here, right? So he says, from there we went on to the town of Gaza, which is the first of the towns of Syria on the borders of Egypt. So Gaza is first of the towns of Syria on the borders of Egypt. So as I was saying, Syria was not this tiny thing here. It stretched all the way down to here, down to Gaza. This used to be one country, one region, one place. It's always been like that. Why do you think everyone speaks the same dialect in this, the Levantine dialect? Why does everyone eat the same food, right? It's obvious. And then you've got this anomaly called Israel, which is nothing, like zero to do with anyone, just like stuck there, a bunch of Europeans. There's, you know, no one is talking about Jews because you have Jews already in all of these places already. But they then forced them out and then went and put them here, and it's an American base, right? But we go back to the issue of Syria. It's a country that fractured, and then Lebanon, for example. I mean, Lebanon is a country that it's got all these various groups, and they're just at each other's throats. So that's another symptom of this issue. It's a French colonial country that they carved out so that it would be like the only Arab Christian country. Arab Christians don't have a problem being amongst Muslims. Why you got to take all of them and dump them in one place? Again, you see this sectarian colonialism. It's like Israel. Let's take all of the Jews and put them in one place, all the Christians in one place. You know, we'll have like Shiites here and Sunnis there. It's colonial thinking, right? Colonialism 101 from Paris and London. It's unrealistic. It only creates problems. So Lebanon had a 30 years civil war. I mean, I'm not going to go into Lebanon's history because we'd be here all night, but it shows you the problems it creates. I mean, again, and then Israel, the biggest problem of all. The Palestinians didn't even get to have their own share of this stupid state concept. Where is the state that you keep trying to impose on people? Where is it? They don't even get it. They get oppressed on top of it. And then Iraq. I mean, once again, it's like they want to carve it up into pieces, and then they don't even let these pieces be. They have to go in and start invading them and bombing them and sanctioning them and starving them. So, you know, it's a lot of issues, so many issues. And a lot of these problems would not exist were these borders not drawn up, and were these countries like Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and Egypt and Jordan enabling the Israelis and Americans, and Qatar, of course, you know, and forget Turkey. I mean, Turkey is not an Arab country anyway. But you know, I mean, Egypt was very different from how it is today, but it got captured. So they have problems with the water down here coming up through the Nile. They built a bunch of dams. I talked about this in the documentary series I made about how they control Egypt. But you see, this is really the best encapsulation I can give you about the Middle East. I'm not going to go into... There are people who are going to try and lie you into details and start saying, oh, it's about Sunni this and Shia that. No, that's the whole point. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about foreigners, and when I say foreigners, I mean invaders. I'm not talking about an immigrant family. I'm talking about invaders coming from France, coming from Britain, coming from Ukraine, coming from America. People with weapons who are here to kill and steal. This is a completely different equation. It's about them coming here and imposing their thinking on others, and it's so big. I don't even want to know. If you would draw up a reparations bill, I don't even want to know what the end sum would be, because every single cent, if you would actually talk about reparations for Sykes-Picot, you would have to count every single, and you count every single cent that is being lost because of wars, because of sanctions, because of all the problems since 1916 and onwards. You have to, right? When someone comes in and starts dividing up your house and making up rooms and moving in new families into your own bedroom. And I mean, so this is the problem with the Middle East, okay? It's Europeans coming in, making up borders, stealing things, and then installing families who call themselves kings or royal families, and then like Saudi Arabia, and then putting bases there so they can attack into the future. Right? This is it. Anyone who tells you otherwise is a liar. This is what's wrong with the Middle East. It's not Arabs, it's Europeans, it's Americans, and it's their collaborators. They ruined it.